We're coming in hot to give you our hot takes on all the latest mental health news.
From headlines and memes to developments and breakthroughs.
We go into this show blind with the hopes of learning something new.
Before sharing some bunny hugs.
And leaving with our eyes wide open. I'm Nick.
And I'm Todd. And this is Mental Health Headline Hot Takes.
We're glad you're here. Hello, welcome to another episode of Mental Health Headline Hot Take. I'm Nick. This is
Todd.
And I'm going to say the S word for you to stop spinning the wheel since it's rigged. And stop.
Spin again.
Stop.
Okay, you can say it. It's on the line.
Oh, God. Spin it again. Stop.
Todd's choice. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'll let you go first because I went first last time.
Fair enough. Okay. My article today is from neurosciencenews.com, and it is titled 40% of mental illness is linked to childhood maltreatment. This is
I almost did this one.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
I actually I wondered if you were going to do this one when I was reading it, but yeah, it's interesting. This one, this is a study from the University of Sydney in Australia. So take that into consideration. It's probably a small sample. This study links 40% of mental health conditions to child maltreatment, and it says that 41% of suicide attempts and 35% of self-harm cases in Australia were linked to childhood trauma. So,
I guess I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I wasn't either. I almost feel like I was more surprised this wasn't already a study. I mean, we've got like books on, attachment styles, trauma, and how your childhood wounds and your relationship with your parents determines how you manage relationships in the future and all of that. But I guess I'm glad that this is a study, right? But I'm more curious to see how do we stop that, change that? And I think our generation, millennials and younger, are doing a good job of sort of trying to break that generational trauma by normalizing mental health and destigmatizing it and having more conversations about it, giving people space to share how they're feeling. Yeah, it's just interesting because I'm glad there's a study on it, but I'm more so I'm curious to see how this changes over time in our life, because I think it is going to, God willing. I think there's a different kind of trauma that people are experiencing now that maybe will lower the childhood trauma from like parental maltreatment, and maybe we'll just get to shift it to somewhere else, I guess, which is horrible to say, but I do think there's good work being done by people in our generation to try and break those generational pieces of it.
This kind of ties in with an article we did in the past about nature versus nurture. And they I think in that one, they kind of said that nurture is probably a bigger effect on people's mental health than nature, I think is how it went.
Yeah, I think it was.
Which makes sense then with this research too. That's how you're brought up in childhood trauma is nurture.
So they made here's some facts and recommendations. So childhood maltreatment contributes significantly to the mental health conditions in Australia affecting major life outcomes like depression, anxiety, and self-harm. Eradicating childhood maltreatment could prevent millions of mental health cases and significantly reduce years lost to death or disability from these conditions. And then they have a policy recommendation that advocates for policy-driven prevention measures, including paid family leave, including paid parental leave and affordable child care to help reduce maltreatment rates. So the policy piece, I think, is good. I'm not actually familiar. I should have looked this up. I'm not familiar with the parental leave policies of Australia specifically, but I know here in the US, there's none. Like legally, there's none. It's up to a company. And then I know in some of the Nordic countries like Sweden, because I worked for a Swedish company, they get something like 16 months after a child's born to split between the parents, however they see fit. And then they've also got like additional time for, I believe, the first few years of the child's life, where they can work less and spend more time with the child. So there are other countries that just have a better system and, understand and recognize that maybe the development of a child and their parents and the relationship of a child and a parent could be, I don't know, maybe more important for society and people than getting back to work right away.
Right. Yeah. The weird thing about the study, I find, I guess, is that, again, this is subjective, right? Trauma is subjective. What one person considers trauma isn't trauma to someone else. And you can't compare trauma. You can't compare pain. So, I mean, I think as humans, it doesn't matter how many laws or policies you put in, there's going to be childhood trauma. But if, some of these other things, like you're saying, like family leave and stuff, I mean, that would definitely help.
Yeah.
But I don't think you'll ever eradicate childhood trauma. So, yeah.
I think a lot of, when I think about my growing up and how I grew up, I think my parents, there's definitely generational trauma, right? But I think my parents had so much economic stress that I think that it kind of became a short fuse, right? Like,
yep.
Short fuse then becomes anger, and then anger became spankings sometimes. I was born in the 80s. And then, anger and the short fuse then caused, me to walk on eggshells and constantly try to make sure that they don't get mad, which then creates the anxiety in me and the willing, you know what I mean? And that's all the stuff I've had to work on in therapy over the years, is to be responsive, not reactive, to not let myself get to the point where I'm going to explode. Right. Or the littlest thing. And it still trickles up. And there's times where I can feel it coming up because I'm stressed or I have a lot on my mind or a lot on my plate, and then something stupid and annoying. You've heard me do it. I was swearing because my light fell down the other day. That was the perfect example.
Maybe you should do ayahuasca.
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
I don't know. That's all the rage now is
Aaron Rodgers made that a thing.
Oh, was it him? Oh, I know.
I think he had a lot of the pop culture piece of it.
Because, you can have this, what do they call it? An ego break or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And then you shed all that stuff. And I don't know. And there's no one size fits all for everybody. So whatever helps, I guess but yeah, I understand what you're saying about all that stuff growing up. And I don't know how you eradicate financial stress. Like it's just going to happen.
That's true.
Forever.
That is true.
Because, if you can eradicate poverty, then maybe you can eradicate childhood trauma.
I think it would play a part. Like, economic stress is a real thing. Like, it is a real thing. Especially when raising kids and you don't know where the meal's coming from, or if you're going to be able to keep a roof over their head. So, yeah.
Oh, you have roofs down there, do you?
We do.
Huh. But yeah, even just like my kids watching me get stressed about finances and stuff can be, traumatic for them. Like, sure, they gain empathy and learn other positive stuff from watching a parent suffer, but also it's finances, man.
Yeah, they suck.
Yeah.
I think it's, again, another one of those things where the conversation it's started, and I thought it was already started. Maybe it is in other studies, but yeah.
Look, Bumble knows you're exhausted by dating. All the must not take yourself too seriously and 6'1" since that matters. And what do I even say other than hey? Well, that's why they're introducing an all-new Bumble with exciting features to make compatibility easier, starting the chat better, and dating safer. They've changed, so you don't have to. Download the new Bumble now.
Okay, so mine is from CP24. Don't know what that is. CP24, breaking news in Toronto and beyond. Black youth face multiple barriers in accessing mental health care, experts say.
Jeez.
Actually, it was on the Canadian Press. Sorry, and then this website picked it up. It was written by Nicole Ireland. Black youth experience the mental health system very differently than other races, says Dr. Mojola Omali. I could be pronouncing that wrong. President of the Black Physicians Association of Ontario. What might seem like apathy is the sign of actually having problems. If Black youth speak loudly, that's often falsely perceived as aggression. Dr. Amy Gajaria says, unfortunately, we know for Black youth, a lot of clinicians just stop with the behavior. They see the anger, they see the irritability, and they stop there. And so then they diagnose with things like ADHD, oppositional defiant, conduct disorder, so on and so forth. For a lot of families, there's a fear of the medical system with minorities. Because of racism and discrimination, that means that sometimes mental health challenges aren't necessarily addressed as quickly as they should be. Those crisis situations can lead to police involvement in communities as well that are already over-criminalized. So, when minority folk have mental health crises, it's aggressive and call the police, and then it just creates more trauma and stuff. So, I think
that too.
They're also saying that minority families sometimes have a trust issue with doctors and mental health and addictions, even so. So then there's a bit of a stigma there too.
Have shared that with me too, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. So unfortunately, the system isn't quite set up for minorities.
Where was that? Like, where was this revealed? Did you say?
It was in Toronto.
Okay, it's unfortunate.
And I say this in my talks quite often, actually. And I saw this meme that anger is anxiety's bodyguard, and so I think when you see aggression, especially in a Black person, a young Black man or something, they're aggressive and people get that's intimidated.
Bullshit. Yeah, that's such a bullshit stereotype.
Yeah, it is. And I have a quick story. The city I'm moving to, Regina, a few years ago, a young guy went to the ER for a mental health crisis. And I've been advocating ever since this happened to me. He was basically security came and shoot him out the door. An hour later, he was found dead in the street, or actually in a body of water, Wascana Lake in Regina.
Jesus. And
the family sued, and there was a settlement and stuff. But they think some of it was because of these things I just said in the article.
So depressing.
Yeah. So as much as I bitch about the system, I am white and kind of privileged. Like, I got help when I needed it. Kind of.
I know.
Once I navigated the system, but I didn't go to jail anyway. Let's put it that way.
Right. That's the
security
thing.
Didn't shoo me out.
That's one of the things. I know we've talked about Chicago before, but it's like the treatment not trauma program, which is instead of throwing, Black folks and Hispanic folks and all of these minorities in jail for having crises, then why don't we get them treatment? And why don't we have crisis interventions and not throw people in jail and not ruin families' lives, and maybe support them to better manage the stressors of everyday life?
100%. Another quick story, if we can. After my suicide attempt, I tried to grab a cop's gun, and I was wrestled and all this stuff, and I was taken to the hospital, went into the psych ward. It was about 2 years after that happened. The cop whose gun I grabbed was actually in the news because he was making racist statements on Facebook about Indigenous people in the province. And that was like a gut punch to me, because I thought, well, if that exact same situation happened, if I behaved exactly the same way, but I was Indigenous, I could have been pepper sprayed, shot, arrested. Anything could have happened, but I would not have been going to the hospital, I'm sure. So, not saying that the police are bad or anything. I'm just saying this one particular guy is, he was not helping himself by saying that stuff.
It's terrible. It's just so depressing to hear that stuff. It really and this is kind of like what we were talking about in that last episode too. Like, we do sometimes accidentally take things for granted that we have a privilege to, but we don't even know we have a privilege to. And that's, I'm sure there's a lot of people that will complain or argue or whatever, but
I had it just as bad as he did.
And I don't like that. And honestly, like,
I don't like it either.
I know there's like race oppression, obviously, right? But I know too that like there's a lot of things that are economics. There's a lot of things that are class. There's a lot of poor people that are white, poor people that are black, poor people that are a lot of things. And I think what really matters to think about there is how there's like generational wealth and stuff that helps some, but there's a lot of poor people. There's a lot of people that struggle economically. And I think that wrapped up with systemic issues, like I would say this is a systemic race and class issue here, right? So we've got to really, we've built a world on a lot of oppression, and we're seeing some of the fallout now as we try to rectify that, I think.
Mm-hmm. And there's no one answer that will fix it all. Unfortunately, it's super complex and nuanced, and every situation is different. And I don't know if humans will ever get everything right, but at least we're talking about it. And I don't know what else to do after that, but hopefully someone else does.
Yeah, it's all going to be multifaceted, and that's what I think is important to know. Like that's what even with my story, like you look at the policy things, it's like, okay, like that's part of it, but talking about it's part of it, normalizing is part of it, destigmatizing it to, I'll tell this story real quick. I'm not going to say who it is, but I know someone in my life, like every time that they tried to say to their mother that they were impacted or hurt by something that happened in their childhood, their mother took it so personally and made it about them and how they were, they did the best they could and they tried so hard and they gave them such a good life and all of this stuff. And it's like, no one's saying that you didn't do the best that you could. And no one's saying you didn't give a good life. No one's saying that you didn't try your best to be a good parent. But like at the same time, like we have to help them so that, we like generationally, we all have a better understanding and it's destigmatized. And it's like, okay to have done the best you can at the time, but like you still hurt me. And I just want to build a better relationship with you now and be seen,
I think what that story you just said is extremely common.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And it's partly because our parents are probably hurting, but they've never been diagnosed or whatever because that generation didn't talk about this stuff or didn't get diagnosed or didn't go on meds or whatever. But I mean, I'm being general here. Is that what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, but I think we've experienced it. So,
well, if anybody has an article or a comment or feedback or anything you want us to know, please reach out to us. We love hearing from you. And if you have a hot take on our hot take, let us know.
I just want to thank everyone who listens and remind people that I post the video to this episode on my YouTube channel, Eyes Wide Open. Todd posts the non-video. Do you post the video on anywhere? Like Spotify?
I posted as a video through Spotify, but it comes up as audio unless it's only video on Spotify, I think, and it's audio anywhere else.
I got to figure out how to do video on Spotify for Eyes Wide Open. But anyway, check us out, and thanks for listening.
See you next time.
Next week. This has been our Mental Health Headline Hot Takes.
We're so glad you came.
Remember, when you heal yourself,
you heal the world.
Be sure to like this video, leave comments, and suggest articles for future episodes.
Hit subscribe to Eyes Wide Open
and Bunny Hugs and Mental Health.